Welcome to the Dino and Joe Show. My name Dino, and that man in all black is not Johnny Cash.
It's not.
It's
That's me. How are you?
fantastic. How are you?
I'm in all black, so I'm trying to be Johnny
You are
Cash.
wearing.
I didn't realize that until you mentioned it, so that's fun. At least I'm, a boy named Sue. I'm not a boy named Sue.
Are you going down in a burning ring of fire?
Yeah.
It's the Folsom Prison Blues.
Yes, for that I was gonna.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. See, look at that, right off the top.
Right. Look at how knowledgeable I am on all things old. Um, it, is that an Oneders shirt?
It is an Oneders shirt. So we talked about this last episode.
Yeah.
I love Tom Hanks. He's part of my, I guess you could say my Twitter trifecta. Whenever I'm on there, I always look at him. But I saw this shirt. His son, Colin Hanks,
Yeah.
has a company called Handkerchiefs. Colin,
Yeah.
if you're listening, we are available for sponsorship. And I own some of his handkerchiefs, but also he was wearing this shirt in one of his promos and said a guy is making these. I love that thing you do. I love the
Yeah.
Oneders or the Wonders. I prefer to say Oneders because it's funnier. And it
Yes.
literally says, Guy, TV player, Jimmy, and Lenny. And
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite shirts of all time.
So you said you like the movie The Thing You Do.
I love the movie That Thing You Do.
So for those that don't know, the Wonders, which
Mhm.
is the actual name of the band,
Correct.
and is a band that starts out in the movie and then gains popularity. Tom Hanks becomes their record rep, and it basically walks through what it was like to be a musical band in the 1950s.
Yep.
Right. And then where they go from there, right?
Mhm.
Because all bands eventually break up unless they're, like U2, or they're just all, guys who grew up together and never leaving each other.
Right.
So yeah, I have a connection to that, which is
Yep.
kind of interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if you'll remember the very beginning of the movie when they first get signed to a record label, and they have a first single, and that song is being played on the radio.
Okay, hold on. Yes.
Do you remember where they were from?
So they were from Erie, PA.
Yes. Where I spent part of my radio career.
Oh, there you
And
go.
the radio station that was playing their song is the station that I worked at,
Okay.
called WJET.
Oh, seriously?
Jet Radio, yeah. So I worked at that radio station for a number of years.
That's awesome.
And that is the radio station from the movie that starts their career.
That's nuts.
So the second piece of that, if you remember, is that they're playing the song outside of a store on speakers.
Yes. Correct.
So that is an old radio story. So rock and roll began in Cleveland. The term rock and roll comes from Cleveland, Ohio, and that is why they have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame there. And the whole reason, or the whole aspect of rock and roll, was it was a type of dance. There was a rock, and then there was a roll.
Sure.
And what they would do back when music was really young and rock and roll was starting to take off, they would play a song, and the record store would have the speakers outside playing the music, and the kids would gather in front, and the DJ would call down to the record store and say, "Hey, how are they reacting to this song?" And the owner of the record store would say, "Oh, they're rocking and rolling to it." And that is where the term rock and roll originally comes from.
That's awesome.
That is legend, right? Everybody will argue whether or not that's true or not, but that actually did happen, and that's why it's in the movie, because that is the premise of where rock and roll came from. And so they were just, reenacting that action from Cleveland, which is about an hour from Erie, Pennsylvania. So that is literally the rock and roll legend of the Wonders, and the fact that, I worked at that radio station. I ran that radio station for like 4 years.
That's killer.
Yeah, there you go.
Look at that.
I do not know Tom Hanks, and I never
are now forever. Well, here's the thing, though. You are now emblazoned in my memory. Whenever I watch That Thing You Do, you will now be a part of that forever. I will think of you as the DJ saying, "And here's a local Erie band called the Wonders."
Yeah. Yep. There you go.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So, yeah, very cool. But yeah, so music to me is always amazing, right? And what I love about my family is that my wife's a very musical person. She knows a ton about music that I don't even know. she can identify songs and bands and way better than I can, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
And my kids are into music, right? So both my boys are really into music and into all different types of music, which is kind of cool. If you want some choice beats, like my 10-year-old's EDM knowledge is pretty phenomenal. Uh, the other day, he was like playing something. He's like, "Wait for the drop, Dad." Like what? And then boom, it hits,
Yep,
and you're
it
like,
hits
I'm
you.
like, "Oh, there you
All
go."
right, it's hard to mistake that.
Yeah, so pretty funny. So, but the whole reason why I think about this, I think about like we've been to different countries. We talked about that,
Mhm.
right? Um, and love to travel and like we always pick up music from everywhere we go. But I was just thinking about this the other day. I'm like, my wife is fantastic to travel to because she just doesn't take crap from anybody.
Oh, all right. Well,
And
that's
so whenever you travel to a foreign country, you know
mhm.
that there's going to be scams or things that people try and pull on,
Every
uh,
time.
and so I have this story, and I'll never forget it because I almost fell for it, even though I knew it was a thing,
Mhm.
and I was so happy my wife was there at that moment. So there's a thing in Paris where
Mhm.
someone will walk up with a gold ring in their hand and say, "Hey, you dropped this. Hey, you dropped this." And then if you go and put your hands on it, they say you're stealing it from me. They throw a fit, say they're going to call the cops and try and take money from you to get them to go away.
Right.
Well, we were walking and we had just gotten there. We were walking. Our hotel was very close to the Eiffel Tower, and we were going to walk to the Eiffel Tower the first day we got there because we were both kind of wiped out. You do small things at first, right? And we're walking, and some guy comes up and he does it. He has a ring in his hand. He goes, "Oh, you dropped a ring." And without thinking, I started to reach, and my wife went off like an atomic bomb. And this guy had no idea what he was in for.
You
She was
picked the
also
wrong person.
right, and she was also pregnant at the time,
Okay.
right? So it was
So,
double duty on this guy, right?
yep.
And she just made a scene, and this guy did not know what to do. I can tell you, he never had gotten this reaction from anybody because he was like, "Oh,
Désolé, I don't know.
excuse me." He was gone, right? Oh, it was absolutely hysterical. And I'm just wondering, have you ever, in your travels, had one of those scam opportunities? Because I have another one that happened in France as well.
I'm trying to think. Nothing in Australia. So when we went to Mexico, we were concerned about it. So when we were going to Tulum, right? We were driving from our resort to Tulum,
Okay,
and on the bus to Tulum, Israel, our bus like tour guide person, said, "Hey,
right,
when you go out there, there's going to be people who are going to be offering you everything under the sun. Just don't take it. Don't look at it. If they say,
right.
here, I'll take a picture for you with your phone, they will still charge you money, even though they're
Yep.
using
Oh
your
yeah.
phone. Like, do
Yep.
not, just don't. Do not. If you have a question, come find me. I'll find somebody to do that for you, or one of the tour people will do it for you, or you can buy things from the shop. So fortunately, we didn't. I almost did. There was a guy who was like, "Oh, here, let me take a picture." I was like, "Yeah," and Tiff was like, "No, no, 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 no," and I was like, "Oh, right, no, 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 never mind, thank you." We were almost there, but it was
Right.
nothing, not as bad as that. And I've heard about that in Paris and also in Rome, but luckily that was never. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I didn't have that in Rome. And I know I don't want to make this sound like Paris is bad, right?
No, of
Like
course
this
not.
could
But
happen anywhere, but
yeah, exactly.
unfortunately, all my stories happen there.
Right.
Um, so I remember I don't remember where Sakakura, we were going somewhere up these gigantic steps that went on forever. And again,
Sure.
my wife was very pregnant at the time, and like the steps, that was not a good
That's
choice. But
right.
we went,
Sure.
and this guy walked up and he tried to put one of those weaved finger
Oh
lock
yeah.
things
Yep.
on, and he went, "Oh no, 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 that was the one." He had those. What some guy had those, but the other guy was trying to give her one of those like friendship bracelets they had
Yeah.
made. It's like,
Right.
"Oh, your bracelet," and all of a sudden she goes, "Don't touch me!" And like everybody turned.
Yep.
It was like
Uh.
that's a statement that people go, "Wait, what's
Uh-oh.
going on?"
What's
Right?
happening?
Oh my goodness, that was awesome. That guy backpedaled like in a hurry too. She's awesome for that. Like,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
I want to
she's awesome.
travel with you now. I
Oh,
want
she's
more of
awesome to
us to
drive
travel.
with too, because let me tell you, she knows where the horn is. She she's a Chicago driver.
Oh,
She
that's
knows where the horn
fantastic.
is,
I love
and she
that.
is not afraid to use it.
I love that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I
I say
so
that because the other day when I was on the phone with you, Uh, it was, come on, people. That's that is literally how you drive.
That's so funny. I am kind of the quote unquote grandpa driver of everybody that I know. I'm a person who can, like, if it says 40 miles an hour, it says 40 miles an hour for a reason. Okay. Like, that's the purpose of that sign being there.
Yes, because
Me-
45 years ago, the car was only safe at that speed.
And here's the thing. I'll be a rebel and go maybe 5 over, but that's
No.
it. That's it. Right. I don't drive fast. Like a lot of my friends are good drivers. I think
Yeah.
everybody knows a pretty solid driver. I think I am the best though, because I am the safest who keeps it at a reasonable speed. And I'm sure everybody I know will disagree, because I think we've said this before. My dad, God
Yeah.
love him, is from Michigan, and he does about 90 everywhere he goes.
Yep.
He is a very good driver. Like, I'll be honest, that guy is a very, very good driver. But if we're driving from Chicago to Michigan, where they live, he'll do it in about 3:45, maybe 4,
Hmm.
and I will do it in about 4.5 to 4:45.
I'm right.
Because
I'm riding with your dad.
yeah, that's the, like I feel very comfortable when he's driving, and I don't realize it, but I'm the person where, like, if I'm like, let's take that 75 down to 70. Don't want to see a highway collision going on here. And then I just enjoy it. I enjoy the ride. I'm in it for the ride usually, not the destination.
And Miss Stacy's in the back going, "Could you go a little
A
faster?"
little bit faster. It's like, no, ma'am, we're keeping the speed. We took a road trip to Yellowstone National Park, and we took turns driving.
Yeah.
And I think I told us about this a couple of episodes ago. And but I was definitely the slowest of the drivers, because I'm driving through all these states. We're an out of state license plate. I don't want to get pulled over either. Just got to be safe. Well, I want to get to the destination, but I also want to see all the beautiful mountains.
Oh
And when we're
yeah.
driving through Nebraska and Iowa, the miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of corn and nothing. It's beautiful. You just want to see that. I will admit I sped a little bit through those parts, because I was like, get this out of here, please.
It's,
I'm done
it's
with it.
like the middle of a movie. We were like, "Oh, we could skip some of this."
That's
Like,
how I am in Interstellar. That's what happens every
yeah.
single skip it till they get off the planet.
Awesome.
Yep.
And a note for traveling parents: when you go to New York City, the pictures in Times Square with Elmo and the superheroes, not free,
Not free, of course not.
not free, and they will let you know that those are not free in a very New York way.
Yeah, of course. How could they not, right?
It's kind of
Uh,
like has to happen.
it has to happen. So this I was talking about somebody. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. So I currently use an iPhone.
Okay,
Right. And I enjoy the iPhone. I know people love Android. Everybody's got a different favorite device. That's fine.
sure.
They're all great. Like, honestly, nowadays, like, they're all pretty much the same. They say this camera's better than that, but honestly, they all make calls, send text messages or whatever. But when back in my day, in the
Back
90s,
when Joe was a kid in
back
the
when I was a kid, I remember the coolest thing in the world, and I had one. I begged my parents for it. Was a Palm Pilot.
oh yeah,
That was the
absolutely.
best,
Yeah.
coolest thing in the world. I'm pretty sure my parents still have my Palm Pilot, because I took such damn good care of that thing.
Yeah.
I used it in school. I used it for friends' phone numbers, for the calendar. Like, it was so cool. And when I think back to it, it's really the coolest piece of technology, I think. One of the coolest to start out with, because nowadays you got all these tablets and these phones you can write on. You got the Samsung Notes where you can do that. You got
Yeah.
Surface Duos that does stuff like that. And I think it's way cool that, like, Palm kind of started that all with a really small, neat device that eventually, like, the Palm Pilot was just literally that. It was a organizer, no
Yep.
phone, no texting capabilities.
Right.
And then you move
Right.
up to, like, the Palm, I think Trio was the first one, or
Oh
Treo.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I was never cool enough to have a phone Palm, but I did have the Palm Pilot, and I was made fun of nonstop. But who's laughing now? It's the thing of the future, and I was way ahead of everybody else.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
let's take a break and then come back, and because I have a Palm story for you. Welcome back to the Dino and Joe Show. This is Dino, that is Joe, and we are talking all things the modern technology that was Palm Pilots.
Yeah, it was.
Now,
It was
Palm is a brand,
Mhm.
right? So you could have Palm Pilot. I did not have Palm Pilot, but I did have a Palm from Sony. It was called the Clie. Do you remember the Clie? It was a
It
flip.
sounds so familiar.
It was a flip, right? So it flipped, and the
Yeah.
joint was where your camera was, and you could rotate it.
Oh.
Yeah, and so this technology at the time, people just didn't have personal technology,
Hmm.
right? I think pagers were there,
Hmm.
cell phones were coming along, but nowhere near what a cell phone capability was, right?
What?
We just didn't get there. And in fact, people would look at your palm and say, "Man, if that made phone calls," right? Because that was like one of those things that we thought
Right.
couldn't happen for a long time. And so I remember I remember this distinctly. So we go into a meeting with a client, and I have my Clie. And again, you used it to take notes, right?
Mhm.
So I'm taking notes, and the whole time this client is just staring at me, and I have no idea why this person is like glaring at me the
Mhm.
whole time. I've never met the person. I was pretty new to the radio station. I mean, I'd only been there like maybe a month,
Mhm.
and just bullets, daggers. I'm like sitting here going, what is going on, right? So we get out of the meeting. I get called into the program director's office, and that program director is the person that runs the radio station.
Right.
And he begins to tear me up about why I'm playing video games in the middle of a client meeting to talk about like this
Yeah.
advertising he wanted to do and the campaign and who was going to voice it, right, and the concept and all this stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you've got some personal video game that you're playing. And I'm going, what in the world? And then it dawned on me that they had never seen a Palm before.
You were too futuristic.
Absolutely had no idea that you could take notes on it.
Right.
And I showed it to him, showed him that I was taking notes. And this is the answer I got. Next meeting, you just need to bring a pad and paper like everybody else.
Sure.
And I was like, aren't we supposed to be all
Okay.
about like
Right.
technology, like the
Future.
future? Yeah.
That's
No.
hilarious.
Yeah.
No.
So so then I split the difference. I brought my palm and my pad of paper, and I never wrote anything on the pad of paper, but I had it there just in case.
Just in case.
Yeah.
That's funny because I was a person who used palms in school for like reminders and all this different stuff, but I was a kid. I was maybe what, 9, 10 years old, and I started
Yeah.
using that thing, and it was always the coolest. And then I think about it.
I'll
I
bet your
think about
friends always thought it was the coolest too.
they did not. Surprisingly, 9, 10 year olds moving all the way up to like 14, 15 did not find that as cool as I did. I was
Yeah.
because
Shocking.
I'm a Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned communicators with the black
Absolutely.
box with this the gold top that flips open.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I felt like it was. So I was like,
And
"This
it
is
did the
sick. This is
beep beep beep
awesome."
beep beep thing that
Yeah.
I like everybody wanted to have like as a ringtone or whatever.
Right. Oh, okay. This is a small tangent, but I'll get back to the main point. They now make Bluetooth communicators. They always had the
Yeah.
Starfleet
Yeah.
insignia.
The emblem.
They
Yeah.
make Bluetooth things where you can tap it to answer a phone call and talk to somebody through the communicator like you would in Star Trek.
I'm pretty sure that at this point, the real question I have is why do you not have one of those?
Okay, true story. Tiff saw this maybe a year ago, tried to buy me one, and it was ended up being out of stock, or we just never ended up getting it, and it was just unfortunate. But I never went back to try it because I was very disappointed. Uh, but it was the coolest thing on the planet. Anyways, back to my main point.
Yes.
It looked cool because it felt like a communicator to me, right?
Right. Right.
And then I think of Palm kind of morphing into the different types of cell phones I had, right?
Right.
So, Palm was the first, and again, it wasn't a cell phone, but it was a PDA, which led to my first cell phone, which was a Sony Ericsson, right? Like the little flip one that you got
Yeah.
in like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Of course, that's why I wanted it. It was the coolest. And then what was next? Oh, my favorite phone probably of all time, the Nokia 3310.
Okay.
Like
I
the
don't, I,
actual, the no. Think of a Nokia phone from the
yeah,
90s.
yeah.
That one. It's that one.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's that one. Like
Gotcha.
everybody knows if you were around in the 90s in any capacity of the
Right.
ages 10 and up, you know which phone I'm talking about. It was the cool Snake. You'd always play Snake.
Oh,
There
yes.
it is.
I do.
See?
So,
That's the best phone. Like that was still to this day one of my favorite phones. I could chuck that thing against a wall and the drywall would break before the phone does. Like it was my favorite thing. And then after that, it slowly started to become more and more smartphones, right? Like my dad had
well,
the
you forgot about the phone that everybody wanted.
the Razor.
Absolutely.
I had that phone too. I had that
I
phone
can
too.
I can go in the other room and go get a pink one.
Grab yours.
And that's not mine, it's my wife's, but I can go
Right.
grab, like, she still has it.
So my dad was always the guy who's like on the cutting edge of technology. He really was. He loved having like the newer stuff. And I would
Right.
always get the hand me down once he was done with it. He'd be like,
Sure.
here, take that. And it wasn't honestly that old when he would give it to me. He'd have something for a year, year and a half, and then buy the new thing. So that's how I got my Motorola Razor.
Okay.
Then he had, I want to say it was called a Samsung Blackjack. It was
Oh,
basically, it was Samsung's version of a BlackBerry.
okay.
It was actually
Yeah, I was
pretty.
gonna say at that point I went to a BlackBerry and that was like the be all end all.
So that was the next one after the Blackjack. He got a BlackBerry, but then he was like, you know what? I'm tired of giving you hand-me-downs. I want you to have your own phone, something special. Bought me a BlackBerry Pearl. I loved that thing.
Yeah.
It was small, compact, super cool. One of just a great phone. And I remember I went over to an iPhone, and the guy at the AT&T store was like, "If you're coming from a BlackBerry to an iPhone, you're gonna have the worst time ever." And in fact, it was not. It was a much better time for me.
Right,
And
right.
but I just think how crazy it is when you start from like the basic, simple, like, the big brick back in the 80s.
Oh
My
yeah.
grandfather used to have one of those. And I think about that to where we are now, and it blows my mind.
Dude, I used to use a bag phone.
Oh, yeah. My mom had a bag phone in her car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was what we had in radio. We had bag phones.
Oh,
We used to
really?
do live broadcasts because we'd call into the studio because that was a whole new
Oh,
way
that
of
makes,
doing like
yeah,
anything live, right? You
that
didn't
makes
have to
sense.
have a transmitter and what they called a Marty unit, right? And a big, antenna on a van and all that stuff. You could just call in from the phone, and that was like game-changing technology at the time. But yeah, we had a bag phone. I'm really carrying that thing around, weighed 400
Hmm.
pounds.
I I also remember the phone I always thought was the funniest was the Motorola StarTech. It's
Hmm.
like the small black Motorola that was a flip phone that literally just gave you the number pad where you could see what number it was. And that phone was hilarious because I remember it was some comedian was talking about how back in the day you could really show your anger with a phone.
Sure.
Back in like the 60s, there was no cell phone, it was a landline. And usually it had a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
old cord. What? Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then you slam the phone down because you're real
Sure.
angry.
Absolutely.
Nowadays, what do? You're like, well, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You just tap the phone really hard. Like what do you like?
And it
There's no
doesn't.
way.
It just hangs up, and
Right.
there's no satisfying like you just hung up on me moment, right?
I remember my mom was talking to her boss on the Motorola Starcom phone, the flip phone.
Yeah.
She'd be like, "Well, you know what, Jerry, I'm not doing that." And then snap, you'd hear that damn thing like just
Yep.
snap shut. You're like, "Oh, oh, oh, we're not talking to mom for a couple hours. She's a little upset. That's a little upset about something." And then it's interesting.
I'll tell you one more story from that radio station.
Tell me as many stories as you want. They're very interesting,
So,
all of them.
uh, so radio guys aren't known, especially in top 40, aren't known for being the most apt to get up early in the morning, right? You
Okay,
have a morning show,
sure.
and that always sucked. You had to be up at like 4 in the morning, right? Even maybe earlier to get to. I hated it, right?
Yeah.
And but the rest of the radio station, we didn't roll into 10 o'clock in the morning, right? Just never did. The midday person might have had to have been there at 9 so they could go on at 10, but like
Sure.
nothing else in top 40 radio happened before then that even mattered.
Right.
And I used to go in because I was the music director at the time, so I would schedule music, and
Hmm.
I would always have to schedule music for the next day. So I'd go in fairly early. I'd be there like at 9,
Okay.
maybe 9:30 would be the latest, right? And I'd be the first person in the building that wasn't part of the morning show.
Mhm.
And I knew something was up because the general manager, his name was John,
Mhm.
would walk around and I would see him like every morning, stick his head in my office and see that I was there. And he'd go down the hall, and all the rest of the offices were closed.
Okay.
The program director didn't show up. I showed up before he did, right?
Okay.
And so one day, John comes into my office, sits down. He's like, I'm going to ask you a question. Sure, John, what's up? I notice you're not here, like, when you should be here. I'm like, John, what do you mean? Like, I don't go on until later in the afternoon, right? And he's like, no. You see, all of my advertising people are here at 8 o'clock in the morning. We do a meeting, and we're ready to go, right? Business is open, we're there. Okay, John. Well, I'm gonna need you guys in here at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I said, John, I deal with record people that are on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
They're not up at 8 o'clock in the morning our time.
Right.
And the ones that aren't on the West Coast that I deal with, they're not out of bed before 10.
Right.
Right. That's just the way it is, right? We do pretty much our business after that. And he's like, well, I walk around here and I see that you're not here, and I need you to pass the word. Everybody needs to be here at 8. And I don't know what got into me in this moment, but I literally looked this man in the face and I said, hey, John, this wing of the radio station opens at 10. And he got up and walked out of my office and never said another word about it to me.
Hey, all right.
Or anybody else.
Hey.
And I have no idea why I got the courage to do it in that moment, but I was like, let's go for broke.
Sometimes the gutsy move pays off.
I eventually got fired from that radio station.
I mean, how was it? Like was it a few? So. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. It was not because of that. So you're fine.
No.
That doesn't matter.
We got the reorg.
Was it the Jet? Was it the one?
No, it wasn't Jet. It was.
I knew that.
This is a station in Pittsburgh when I was there. Yeah, back at the old days of working for Kiss FM.
Not to say who it was.
Yeah,
but it rhymes with GIF FM.
Right, it's the name of a Prince song.
Yes.
But yeah, so that was a fun time. That was a great radio station, though. I had a lot of fun there in the short amount of time I was there.
You made gutsy calls, and I like that.
I did make some gutsy calls. That was one of the best moments I still remember. But that station was fun. We had a lot of fun there.
So I wanted to ask. I noticed behind you, it seems like a slightly different setup. I noticed that you had the fantastic Virgil jersey put up there. It looks very nice.
Yeah. So I had certain projects I wanted to get done, and I overrode doing the project for my wife that I'm sure she wants done and I didn't do yet. To hang a kayak on a mounting bracket in the garage. Yeah, that didn't happen. But I did take the time to reorganize my jerseys and to hang up my Virgil jersey behind me. So
here's the thing. Yeah. That kayak thing sounds very complicated. That looks, I'm not going to say it looks very easy, but I mean, I imagine it's putting a jersey in a frame and hanging up on the wall. That seems much easier. And for me, in a project management type thing, you do the easy stuff first. That way you warm yourself up, right? Like you get the easy stuff done so you can focus on that hard stuff later on.
And I'm sure she'd like to have it done this weekend, but we have a soccer tournament to go to.
Hey. So commitments are commitments. Back out of it.
Right. I mean,
what do you want to do?
And I hear the couch calling me. It's the Dino and Joe Show.